Focus. A lot of people comment and notice my dimple on this cheek right here, but I actually have two. I don't know if you can see this one right here, but you can only ever see this one because the window's over here, so it doesn't shine on this one. Okay guys, I'm back today. I just got home from school a few minutes ago and I felt like filming a video for you guys. So I know a lot of people are probably gonna just look at the title of this video and be like, duh, the horses are expensive. But I've actually thought about this video for a while and thought about, you know, like, are horses actually expensive as everyone says they are, and who can afford them and who can't? If you're like not deciding on getting a horse because you're afraid you won't be able to afford it, what actually you're gonna have to pay for and like how expensive they really are, all depends on you and your lifestyle. So I wrote down some things that I thought go into consideration of how expensive your horse is gonna be. So horses, yes, can be very, very expensive and can really bust your bank if you let them. But for me, honestly, I've had my horses for like 10 years now, and I recently got another horse, and I may be getting another miniature horse for temporary training prospect. I had a training prospect project horse a couple summers ago, and honestly, as a high school student, I've been able to afford it completely on my own. My parents have helped me very limitedly, like small things here and there, but nothing major or anything. I pretty much paid for all that myself. So yeah, I wrote down some things that go into thought when you're thinking of buying a horse, or if you want to buy a horse but you're nervous you won't be able to afford it. I wrote down some things that might be able to help you save money and think about how you're going to save money if you don't think you can afford them. Alright, so the first one is, if you're going to buy a horse, what kind of horse are you going to buy? So that's the first thing. That's the major expense when you're buying or dealing with horses, is, are you going to buy a broke horse or an untrained horse? Are you going to buy like this, you know, 10-year-old show horse that's been to eminence and has been to 4-H shows and big Congress shows and all this other junk that's been showing its whole life, and has won ribbons, has won trophies, has won all this junk, is super broke out, has been on trails, herded cattle, all this stuff, super experienced, very, very broke horse that's probably going to cost a lot of money? Or are you going to go with you know, a green broke horse that's broken out, has some miles on it, needs experience? Or are you just going to go for a cheap, unbroke horse that you can either pay to put the training on? And I don't know, I guess trainers vary from location. Around where I am, $600 a month to send your horse to a trainer is pretty average. But again, it all depends on what you want to train your horse to do. Or are you going to learn how to train a horse yourself? Are you going to ask other people for advice, go to YouTube for advice, ask trainers, and do it yourself for free? That's going to cost a lot more work. So, I've mentioned it before, but in case you guys didn't know, my horses were bought for me when I was very little, but basically my horses were around $1,100, Soccer and Sugar together. We bought them together. And Soccer was around $800. He was green broke and he has good bloodlines, which also matters, that I'll talk about in a sec. Sugar was basically, I think she was probably an accident foal that wasn't supposed to happen. So she doesn't have the best bloodlines. She's not even registered. And she didn't know anything, and she was $300. So, you know, it just depends. And so neither of them were experienced or anything. They were pretty cheap. I learned how to do all the training myself, so I didn't, you know, have to pay for their training. So that saved a lot of money. Obviously, I was like 7 years old. I couldn't afford to send them to training. But bloodlines is also very important when you're looking at buying horses. If you're not someone who cares about bloodlines such as I am, I don't really care who their grandparents are or how many shows they won or how nice they look or whatever. I mean, I care how nice they look, I guess, but I don't really care if they're registered or not. That kind of stuff matters. If your horse is super highly bred, came from a selective, expensive breeder, then they're probably going to cost a lot more. If your horse isn't registered, you know, has a nice look and everything, but you don't know their bloodlines, then they're going to probably be a bit cheaper. So the next thing is, where are you going to keep this horse? So I think mainly the biggest thing that people spend money on with horses is their board. Are you going to board the horse somewhere and keep them at someone else's property, or are you going to keep it at your house or in your backyard or at a relative's place? It all kind of matters when you're looking into board, and boarding facilities can definitely vary in expense. If you're looking at a place that has a really big indoor arena, an outdoor arena, a round pen, a whole bunch of training props, a private trainer to give lessons and to train your horse and all this stuff, then it's probably going to be more expensive because that place offers a lot more than, say, a facility that's just a pasture turnout, has shelter, maybe has a riding space or a round pen, just super basic. So where are you going to keep it? You need to look into keeping it at your own property for free, which is how my horses are. They're at my dad's house. I don't have to pay anything to keep them anywhere. Or are you going to look at a place somewhere else? And does this place feed your horse hay? Are they feeding it for you? A lot of places do that. Do you have to provide hay, or does the place provide hay? Grain is a big one. I know a lot of facilities feed all the horses grain. Doesn't matter if it's their horse, if it's a boarding horse. The boarding facility that I work at, we feed 3 types of grain. The senior feed, which that doesn't really count in my opinion, that just goes to the old horses. Growth, it's Purina Growth, I believe. That's what the foals and the 2-year-olds get. And then Strategy, also by Purina, is what the middle-aged horses get. So that barn just feeds all the horses depending on what grain they need. So if you don't want your horse getting that, you need to let the boarding facility know that, because that oftentimes goes into the expense of the board, because they have to buy and pay for all the feed. Also, a lot of you guys know that because I have BB, my parents didn't want me to get a 3rd horse. I got one anyways, and so they do make me pay a little bit to keep BB there, but she's at my friend's house during the winter time because my parents, you know, don't want to take care of her. So I pay $60 a month for BB to be at one of my friend's places. Super cheap. But, you know, she's just out in a pasture pretty much with a bunch of other horses and shelter and whatnot, and she gets fed. So it's pretty inexpensive, but you just have to look at the facility, what they offer, and everything like that. The second biggest thing I think people spend money on is hoof care, because, you know, I don't shoe my horses or anything like that. I think horses... No horse really needs shoes, in my opinion. I think horses are fine without shoes. I don't believe in them. But, you know, horses have evolved so much since they've been in the wild that sometimes people will breed horses that just have shitty hooves and are just crappy hooves, or get laminitis, or they founder. What's the other one? Get navicular. Stuff like that. So when you're going to look at buying a horse, you need to ask... the seller, has this horse had any history of hoof problems such as those? Has their parents had any of those hoof problems? Because those things are expensive to treat. I don't think horses need shoes, but that's something people spend a lot of money on, is having a farrier come out to shoe their horse and having all 4 feet shod and whatever. Expensive shoes. It costs a lot of money to get a horse shoed. And hoof care, as in just regular trimmings. I learned how to trim hooves myself through YouTube videos, through articles, through asking other farriers, watching other farriers, having them show me how they do it, and all kinds of stuff. I did extensive research before just trimming away my horse's hooves, obviously. So if you're willing to put in that work and learn how to do it, I've saved so much money by trimming my own horse's feet. My horses are also just trail horses. I'm not a professional. Soccer and Sugar are just my trail horses, so they don't need any special type of angles or super nice looking hooves or whatever. So that is also taken into consideration. If you're gonna do like jumping and barrel racing and all that athletic stuff, you might want to consult the farrier first, because I know some fatal things have happened from horses' hooves having the wrong angles and stuff. But if you're you know, willing to put in the time and effort to learn to trim hooves or go take a class on it, then that saves a lot of money to learn to do it yourself. Because around here, it's like $30 a horse is average for farriers. That's typically what they charge. And so I would have to pay $90 every couple months to have Soccer, Sugar, and BB's hooves all trimmed. And, you know, that's a lot of money for a high school student especially. So I learned to do it myself, and it saved vaccines. So what am I talking about? Oh my god, I cannot talk today. I get my horses vaccinated every year. So I do it once a year. Some people do it twice a year. If you're going to be showing and traveling and taking your horses places during the winter time, then you might want to get them vaccinated just so they don't get illnesses and sick from other horses. Not necessarily a natural thing, but just from other horses. And there's a whole bunch of like herpes viruses now for horses and strangles and stuff like that. So you want to vaccinate for those. But if you're like me and you don't ride your horses in the winter time, because here in Iowa it's freezing freaking cold in the winter, so I don't ride them in the winter. I don't take them places. There are no bugs and mosquitoes in the winter time, so there's not really a reason for me to vaccinate them in the winter. So I do it every spring in the summer, and they get just the basic, like, it's like a 3-way or a 5-way of like West Nile, Lyme disease, the equine herpes, and maybe I might be missing some. But if you're gonna vaccinate your horse, do it necessarily. If there's no reason for you to do it in the winter time, if that's not, you know, your life stuff, you don't do anything in the winter with your horses, then there's not really any reason you need to vaccinate them in the winter. I don't. Some people spend a lot of money and get their horse a vet checkup like every month or 2 months or something. Personally, I think that's ridiculous. I would never spend that much money to have a vet come out here, do exams and whatever every month to see if my horse is fine. If my horse is acting fine, he's not showing me any signs of discomfort or sickness or anything, I'm not going to pay a vet to come out just to look at him and for him to tell me it's fine. So use the vet accordingly, get vaccines accordingly if you so desire. Tack. So tack is one of those things that you basically decide how much you're gonna spend on tack, because some people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tack, and some people hoard tack and have closets full and boxes of tack and just have a ridiculous amount that they don't use. I personally buy all used tack. First of all, I'm vegetarian, so I don't typically like to give like my money right to the company if I'm buying leather items, just because I don't like to use leather as much. But leather's also better quality, so are you gonna go for cheaper synthetic stuff or higher end leather quality stuff? Are you gonna get brand new stuff that is way more expensive, or slightly used stuff that's gonna be cheaper? This girl at the barn I work at spent like $3,000 on a show saddle or something. And I was like, that is fucking ridiculous. I think the most expensive saddle that I've bought for myself was like 150 bucks, okay? That is a lot of money to spend on a saddle. And for fancy show clothes, for your fancy bridle and your fancy little bit, and, you know, all that stuff goes in. Your helmet. Some helmets are insanely expensive. Boots, all that kind of stuff. You basically decide how much you're going to spend on that. So if you're going to take the cheaper route and go for used items, that's what I do, because ain't nobody got time for that. Hay and feed. So that's the other big one that costs a lot. like I said, with the boarding facility, you have to, know, is the boarding facility going to feed and supply hay for you, or grain if you feed grain? I don't feed grain at all, any processed grain, so that completely cuts out of my budget. A lot of people spend money on bags of grain. The only grain my horses get is just whole oats, or just plain oats. And yes, that's a grain. It's like a grain that humans would eat, but the things that I only feed my horses are in completely raw, natural form. Flaxseed, maybe, if I have any. I don't think I've ever given them that, and just whole oats. I don't buy money or spend money on processed, expensive, high quality, got all these kinds of nutrients and whatever, on grain, because I just don't feel like it's necessary. But if you have an old horse, or you're getting an old senior horse, maybe they'll need some senior feed or something like that. Hay also is, most expensive, especially for people in winter states, that if the barn doesn't supply the hay, they have to buy their own hay. And yeah, it depends on the quality of hay. If you're getting straight alfalfa hay, that's going to be a lot more expensive, and personally, it's not as good for your horse. But grass hay is less expensive, and grass alfalfa mix hay is going to be less expensive. So where are you going to get the hay? Are you going to get round bales, square bales? All that matters when you're talking about feed. And is your horse going to be on pasture? See, my horses are on pasture, so I don't have to worry about buying anything for them in the summertime, because they're on pasture all the time. And in the winter, we actually own our own hay farm, and we bale the pasture, the horses' pasture. We just keep them in the dry lot for a day or two, mow the pasture, bale it, and then we have hay for the winter time. And we also have a hay field of alfalfa and stuff, so that goes into it too. So if you're keeping your horse on a farm that is your own farm, or a relative's or whatever, do you have access to do your own hay that's going to be cheaper, or are you going to go and buy hay from a farmer that sells it? So all of that matters. Grain, I think, is the most expensive, just because of the high qualityness or whatever. And also a good one is like supplement blocks, and they're not that expensive, so it's not a lot of money out of my pocket to go buy a salt block or a protein block or a mineral block for them. That isn't really a big expense. So those are the main things that I thought of that are the most expensive things about horses, and how I have learned to save a little bit money. I really don't pay anything except for BB's board in the winter time for my horses. I really don't pay for anything unless I'm buying new tack. So when you're buying a horse, or if you want to buy a horse, make sure you look into it. If the horse has any hereditary health problems, you're going to have to pay for. Hoof problems, you're going to have to pay for. All that kind of stuff before just jumping in and buying the first horse you see. Or if you are, going to put in training, or you're going to buy a trained horse. It really all depends on your lifestyle with horses. Are you going to go with, the big show, extravagant, expensive horse lifestyle? Who's calling me? I don't know who that is, so I'm not going to answer, but or are you going to go with like my lifestyle, which is very simple? I train horses for other people, and I train my own horses. I love trail riding and simple stuff like that. So I don't pay a lot in show fees or show clothing. I don't have to buy any of that stuff, or fancy spurs or whatever. I don't use spurs anyway, but so it just depends on your lifestyle and what lifestyle you want with horses. If you're going to go for the show life, then yeah, you have to be prepared to probably spend a lot more money. Also, to go into the tack, people spend a lot of money on unnecessary tack, such as blankets. You guys know how I feel about blankets, most of you, and so that's another big expense. Blankets cost a lot of money most of the time, and they're pretty cheaply made most of the time, and they rip and tear because your horse destroys them, and so people have to go out and buy new ones, and some of them cost up to more than $200. And so do your research, of course, and learn what is necessary and what isn't necessary. And yeah, so it all just depends on what you want to do. think about that before you, go get a horse. And basically, that's all I got for this video today, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed making it for you. So if you have any other video requests, leave them down below. Also, what was I gonna say? My new affiliate. I am now an affiliate with geopetric.com. I'll leave the information in the description. If you guys are looking to support vegan, cruelty-free pet supplies, if you need pet supplies for your dog, I'm not sure if they have cat stuff, but mostly dog stuff, you can use my code CHAZ in all capital letters, CHAZ, for a discount code, and I'll put that in the description below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!